I'd like to tell you some of my advice on how to find and have a good relationship with a spouse or intimate partner. Even if you're not looking, you might know some people, friends or family, who need this video, or maybe you can use some of my words and ideas to tell them yourself. But first, I'm going to point out the absolute worst types of advice to follow, and the reason I feel the need to do that is because that's currently the advice that's most popular, unfortunately. I have to show you where the landmines are before I can get you across the field. Who am I to tell you such a thing? Well, my wife and I have been together happily for the last 27 years. And during that time, I've seen a lot of other relationships fail. My grandparents were together for 60 years until death parted them, and I suspect my wife and I will be the same. We're halfway there already. So you might say that I've recognized the patterns of success and failure, and I would like to share them with you so that you know what to look for if you want to find and or keep that special someone, or know someone who does, or know someone in a bad situation who just needs help to recognize it for what it is. But why? What does this have to do with the main themes of my channel? Well, for the last 15 years now, I've used this YouTube channel to criticize organized religion and corrupt authoritarianism, both together because one usually begets the other. That directly relates to this topic of intimate relationships because there's currently a massive movement religiously motivated and handicapping a lot of young people to a lifetime of doomed relationships. A lot of their teachings can even be found in the ramblings and manifestos of mass shooters. Because when you try to sell cancer as the cure for cancer, bad things happen. What I'm referring to is the fetishization of religious traditionalism exemplified by what many refer to as the red pill movement. As much as they claim to extol the virtues of traditional conservative religious values, you'll sometimes find that people who actually have such values have just as much disdain for them as I do, because they know, just as I do, that their values aren't deeply held beliefs like an actual religious conservative would have, but rather a self-serving costume. That's why I refer to it as a fetish.
Destiny, we really kind of came across, so the algorithm, the YouTube algorithm starts sending all of this red pill content to us. Probably because
to everybody, I think
it's so contradictory. It's kind of what we've said about this red pill movement that really tries to latch itself onto conservative traditional values and all these other things. And it's like, this movement couldn't be further away from anything that has to do with conservatism, conserving the nuclear family, or any of the things that they claim to, I guess, prioritize or find value in.
Today, we look up, well, the young kids, the young boys, and even some of these grown men are looking up to the red pill content creators. You know, and it's sad to see how people slip into that pit.
Now, this is yet another case of using religion as a tool of control and influence. These people will tell you to turn to God, but what they're really telling you to do is to turn to them. Like so many, they use God as a proxy for themselves.
But there's probably going to be cases where there are like really, really horrible marriages. And my question is, would you recommend those people to like choose happiness and like divorce and try to like be on their own because being in the relationship makes them really, really unhappy? Maybe even suicidal, who knows? Do you think they should rather stay just because they...
But you're trying.
I
think they should go to church and return to God. Like you're taking a very, very...
Yeah, but I don't... Let's say if your partner is being really, really, really bad to you and there's like so many things that he needs therapy, but he's not doing it. do you think that the wife in that case should stick around for that, even though it might be really bad for her and the child?
It's my opinion that biblical prophecies are shaping up to be fulfilled right now. And I made the decision to be abstinent, to stop having sex with my girlfriend at the time, because I knew it was a sin against my own body, against her body, and against the Lord. And I also knew that I wanted to secure God's favor over my life. I wanted to honor God with my life, and I wanted God to reward me in turn for that. And quite honestly, he has, man, in spades. So I would just encourage you, seek to honor the Lord with your life. Pray to him for where it is that you want to go in life, what it is that you want.
Why is it that every time someone tries to step up to the plate to lead men, they're immediately labeled misogynists? If this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy are all bad role models for men, can you tell me who the good ones are?
Hello, darkness. She put a guy who made millions running a cam girl site in the same category as Jesus. If I wrote her as a character, it would be criticized as too unrealistic, an exaggeration, or even a straw man. That's how broken these people are. I mean, look at how cartoonishly evil this next guy is.
And you participate in conversations like this, and then feminists will literally think to themselves, why has every major religion in society imposed like borderline draconian rules on our behavior? And it's like, maybe this lends some credibility to that thing. I mean, women don't aspire to agency. This is the problem with women are oppressed. Can women be oppressed if they're not like tied down somewhere? You guys don't aspire to agency the way that men do.
These people used to be smart enough to reject the religious oppression of the past, or at least be revisionists to downplay it. But now they actively just admit that they think it's justified.
They using God, they saying that they align with God just so they'll have more authority to people that are weaker in their thinking. They know you lost. Let me just say God in my message, and I get their attention. Somebody might be on the fence about this. If I tell them that I'm religious, then maybe they'll listen to me. I can go ahead and get them. I know I'll go ahead and hook them when I say God.
Now, that last guy I showed you is a sincere Christian. We disagree on theology, but we absolutely agree that religion can be misused. The Red Pill movement is a juggernaut. They have wildly popular influencers who get many millions of supporters, views, and dollars. These are often very young people who weren't even born when I met my wife, let alone have any relationship experience.
Rock and roll, longest relationship?
About 4 years.
Okay. Mary?
Currently in my first relationship, which is at 10 months.
I am single. My longest relationship was about 2 years, 18 months, right around there.
Yeah, currently single, longest relationship, about 1.5 years.
Recently single, longest relationship, 4 years, 5 years?
Look,
you have to endure.
Marriage comes down to, in my opinion, my humble opinion, as a single 28-year-old man, you know, I can't speak from experience, but it's like,
all these people do is talk about things they don't have any experience with.
If this is my advice to all marriage-minded women out there, okay?
No experience. And he's giving advice to millions of people. And what other profession can you do there? A politician, maybe? The ones who aren't so young and inexperienced are often bitter, jilted people who have been divorced 3 times. Basically, these are the worst sorts of people to be giving relationship advice, and they're hurting the very people who support them. And the reason they can get away with it is because they're the ignorant leading the ignorant. And when you know a lot about something, it's easy to tell when someone else doesn't, especially when they present themselves as authoritative and try to trick you into thinking that they do know, because not all of them are so willing to admit that they're inexperienced. But people who are ignorant can be easily tricked by those who are also ignorant.
Show of hands if you're married in the audience. Show of hands. Oof. Okay, very few.
Stupid.
Okay. we got cameras on the audience.
That's not very
show of hands if you're currently in a relationship. Okay.
Stupid.
So half the audience. Show of hands if you're single. Okay. Oh.
My relationship looks exactly like what these red pill people claim to be selling. My wife and I are happy, monogamous, long term, stable. We have children. Now, there are people who are desperate to have what we have, and desperate people are vulnerable people. They are the ones con men love to prey upon because it's easy to take advantage of their hope, sort of like religion does. So naturally, there exists a cottage industry online dedicated to selling shitty solutions to hopeful people. And rather than help them, it just makes their problems worse.
You listening to these guys because they got the glitter and the gold. They ride around in the nice cars, and now because they done that, they got authority in your mind. But they got that authority by leading men that don't have no guidance, that are lost. They looking for the answers, and they find that toxicity. And then guess what? Because they feeling a certain type of way and they able to hit the pain points that these people are dealing with, you gravitate toward that. If you hurting and somebody is catering to what, or they're addressing the things that have you, that's got you hurting, if they making these people feel bad for what they doing and that's what's got you hurting, you're gonna look at it. You're gonna love it. You're gonna subscribe. You're gonna donate money to those channels. You're gonna make them make more money. Why? And what's that gonna do? It's gonna allow them to go buy more designer, more jewelry, more cars. You know what I'm saying? That's gonna give them more influence in your mind because they balling. That's the problem with the world. We only think that if you balling, then you blessed. People that are the real blessed people, they don't carry themselves like that. That's what you got to understand. Don't let these people deceive you.
He's right. But the difference between us is that he'll also tell you the answer is God. But I won't do that. I don't think you need that crutch. Now, what are these red pillars actually selling? The main problem with their advice is twofold. One, they pit men and women against each other as adversaries. And two, they treat relationships transactionally. The great hypocrisy is that these were also the major complaints they've had of their political opposition. They use identity politics, oppression Olympics, and grievance culture to make their complaints. The very same criticisms they've had of leftism and feminism, and whether or not those criticisms were legitimate or not, they are now the traits that they enthusiastically embrace. It's the most remarkable projection I've ever seen.
I think if we asked men and women at this table to list off how they're oppressed in today's society, then men could come up with a much bigger list.
Men are more oppressed than women.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Not only today, but historically too.
Men are scared to even speak to women.
Disability, men have climbing rates of like suicide.
I think that we are perfectly okay with going through something, but if we don't see a way out because of all the progress that women have made, we've had to tilt the scale so you guys have a greater advantage in pretty much every aspect of life, and men just don't see that light at the end of the tunnel. And that's why we just kill ourselves.
Hello, darkness. The reason why men have to lead is because women are inherently self-destructive. Men need to lead because since women are emotional thinkers and they're more erratic and they're more dependent on how they feel, right, that can cause some destructive things. And women have all the same rights and privileges that men do while having female privileges that men will never enjoy. So the reality is life is easier for women in 2023. Privilege is invisible to those that have it. She said that knowing, right, like it didn't even come to her mind that I'm getting these privileges because I'm a woman. She went ahead and said it anyway. It actually made your argument weaker. But women don't see it because privilege is invisible to them because it's so common.
Notice how he has appropriated the language of feminism to attack feminism. If you think that men are so much more tough and capable than women, then why complain about women being given advantages? A big, strong, masculine, tough guy should be able to cope with that. Why even notice or care? What are they even doing complaining? That's not stoic. It's like crying because your sister got 3 toys when you only got 2. And it's even worse if they're wrong. And women really do have it worse than men. Then they're just adding insult to injury. I know I wouldn't want to be a woman. But even if they're right, these are the worst types of immature, petty attitudes to have when trying to obtain and maintain a mature, meaningful, long-term relationship. For instance, you know how some couples get into that argument in which they fight over which one of them does more for the other one? That's not a good sign. In a healthy, mature relationship, you should be perfectly fine with doing more for your partner than they do for you. Unless they're deliberately taking advantage of you, or to a lesser degree, you think they're taking you for granted and are unappreciative. I can understand how that could be frustrating, but if you truly care about them and want what's best for them, then that should not be something that endangers the relationship. One of the more blatant ways they use identity politics is through what you kids these days refer to as the pick-me's. Typically, they are attractive young women who become very popular by telling men what they think men want to hear, which usually entails putting down women in some way and or telling men that bad behavior is actually good behavior. This tactic exists across all demographics, though. The woman-hating woman, the black-hating black person, the gay-hating gay person. These people enjoy the cheap and easy unearned credibility of being one of the, quote, good ones. They are the anecdotal exceptions to the rule who are trusted above all the others because they say the things the people who hate them want to hear. They are the ultimate confirmation, the insiders, the contrarians, the truth-tellers, the shields. But being part of the group you're bigoted against doesn't make you not a bigot. To believe otherwise is to embrace identity politics. Even Jewish Nazis existed. And those who would scoff at this phenomenon will absolutely recognize it when they see it in the white-hating white person or the man-hating man. They'll recognize that right away. They know damn well what I'm talking about. The pick-me's are very convenient tools. They are the answer to phrases like, believe women. Believe women? Okay, just find a woman who claims to agree with everything you believe, even if she only represents 0.0002% of the majority of women, and then conveniently ignore all the others. Well, that's one way to fail. Women who build a career selling traditional values are the ultimate hypocrites. They certainly aren't going to give up their careers to be housewives, because if they did that, then we'd never hear from them. Yes, they think women should be put in their place and that men should be in charge, except for when it comes to themselves. They make a living telling people that their relationship problems are not their fault. No, instead they blame an entire gender or generation. Cheap, easy, satisfying, and wrong. Meanwhile, the men of these movements try to sell the idea that success is a masculine trait, and that if a woman is successful, she is inherently unattractive to men, because in order to be successful, she must have the bad habit of acting masculine.
It's not that they're intimidated, it's that women that make money and are successful are annoying most of the time. That's what they don't want to tell you.
Very combative.
Because women that are successful act like men.
Like
so
how,
hold on, stop.
Sorry.
So you wouldn't date me when I act feminine. Why should a man date you when you're acting masculine?
I mean, how are women acting masculine? Like, are
women
they...
that earn a lot of money
Yeah.
typically have bad habits.
This is a very sneaky tactic. Why encourage women to be unsuccessful? Why tell women that they should not be ambitious? So that they have to rely on men. Take away the false show, the bravado, the music they edit in to accentuate their monologuing, take away all the dressing, and what do you really have left? These guys are so weak and lack so much confidence that they think they have to entrap women rather than attract them. They don't want women to be able to make a living for themselves, so that they have to rely on them to have a home and money, because deep down the only thing they believe they have to offer is materialistic.
So do you think I should just drop out of law school and get married and just get kids?
Do it! I'm not. Here's the thing.
And that their grandfathers had it easier, and that their grandfathers had to work less to find women who are better than modern women.
Hoflation, so modern men have to work 5 times harder than their grandfathers did for women 20 times worse than what their grandmothers were.
This is why they tell you that they want to go back to the way things were 100 years ago.
That's what country succeeds.
No.
It's like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
That's because they want to be able to buy love. Materialism is the key that opens the door for them. They'll deny it because they too claim to dislike consumerism, but in truth, it's what they have that they think matters. But what happens in a society when the women don't need them for support? They're left by the wayside, and they don't like that. When a woman doesn't have to rely on you for survival or comfort, the only thing you have left to bring to the table is who you are as a person. And for a lot of these guys, that's a death sentence, because such insecure and jealous people can be quite unlikable. So rather than look inward, they blame a gender, a generation, or society in general, just like the pick-me's, because the pick-me's know that's exactly what they want to hear. When you can't rely on yourself, you're going to want to rely on a societal system to do it for you. That's really why these guys want to go back 100 years. It's incredibly ironic because while they want to be set up in a system in which their wives have to rely on them, they are the ones who cannot accomplish that without a system they can rely on to set that situation up for them at an institutional level, one that forces the rest of us into this conservative tradition. They can't achieve it on their own, so they want society to do it for them. Again, embracing one of their classic criticisms of leftism. The bottom line is this: if it's what both the man and the woman want, to live that traditional gender stereotyped lifestyle, then that's fine. Do it. More power to you. But it should be by choice and not imposition. If you can't achieve it voluntarily, then you don't deserve to have it because you aren't worthy of it. It's the abusers who try to get leverage over their victims so that their victims have to rely on them. These dudes have no problem with deluding themselves into a loveless marriage. That's why their marriages fail, why they want it to be more difficult for the woman to leave them, and why they are even against divorce. Some of them even want to outlaw divorce.
In the Catholic Church, I know that there's like annulments for marriages and stuff.
That was a mistake.
Are there no?
Maybe you made the wrong mistake with your spouse, but you still have a family, have a child. Maybe you're miserable, but at least you do have that thing. And what actually happens when people are getting divorced isn't these types of scenarios. It's like literally initiated. You'll probably know the stat, between 2/3 and 80% of the time by women, and the plurality of that reason is they feel unfulfilled. They want a new chapter in their life. It's like the eat, pray, love phenomenon. Yeah. That should be outlawed. You legally actually should not be able to do that.
If there's someone that's very, very young, might be really religious and like values marriage a lot, and goes into a marriage and has kids when they're like 18, 19, 20, and then a year into the relationship, it gets really, really abusive.
From who?
Would you? From both.
This is so rare.
Anyone
So
really.
rare.
I mean, it happens.
Go on.
My point is, I'm just, even though it might be rare from what you guys think,
it is.
If it would happen, what would you recommend for those people to do? Would they divorce, or do you want them to keep going in the relationship?
Keep going.
You can't divorce. I mean, that's not a real thing. You can like separate. See, his Catholic background shines through. He knows. You can't divorce. You can separate, but you can't actually divorce. That's not a real thing.
Even though it might be like physically abusive.
You got to endure. People are too.
You want to stick in the
People
relationship.
are just.
I mean, look,
people
I'm gonna be
nowadays
honest.
are just. Everybody.
What about if two people get married, they have a kid, and then the wife starts cheating? Do you think they should divorce?
Absolutely.
They'd rather lock someone into a relationship with them, even if the other person doesn't want them, because for them, it's not really about love. It's about power and insecurity, because if they were truly worthy, they would not need that power. Some guys put in a lot of time and effort to build themselves. They focus on working out and making money. They try to become what they think the ideal man should be. And then they fail with women and become bitter and jealous of men they see as lesser, having better relationships with women. Because in all their time and effort, they failed to cultivate the one thing that matters most in the long run, their personalities. Spraying cologne on a turd isn't going to make you not a turd. You can attract all the women in the world, but if your personality is garbage, why would any of them want to stay with you? Someone is not going to want to stay with you for 60 plus years because you have a nice car or a sexy body. You have to have some other reason that people want you in their life. And that's very good news. If you're not conventionally attractive, but you're confident, likable, and selfless, it's very bad news if you're resentful, entitled, and jealous. If that's the case, the first step, really the most important step, is gaining the self-awareness to recognize that is what you are. You have to be honest with yourself. Overcome the narcissism and the desire to blame everyone else for your relationship problems. Once that is done, once you have humbled yourself, then you will be empowered to do something about it. But because some of these guys don't do that, they get rejected and become spiteful. And when they can't introspect, when they can't accurately assess where the problem truly lies, within themselves, the common denominator, their immediate response is to cry out that society is the problem. They don't need to change, the world does. So in a lot of these successful red pill podcasts, you'll see the hosts treat women like shit. And that appeals to the rejected men in their audience.
You sound like a stupid ass. I'm trying to figure out why you rated me a 2, because we're not going off our interactions. We're going off beauty.
I don't like light skin.
I don't give a He's light skinned just like me. And you just gave him a 9. You gave me a 2. You only gave me a 2 because of the whole interaction that we've been having, right? So do me a favor, get the up and get the out.
Thank you.
Yeah, get out.
So what the
Stupid ass.
It's just really bad faith that you're playing this game when you requested to be on the show.
Do you think you're being a good? Do you think you're being a good representative? Hold on. Do you think you're being a good representative of feminism right now?
Do we kick her off?
I think
we could. Before we do, no. Hold on.
Men are better at everything compared to women, and women need to hear this.
Yeah.
You're.
Question for
He played the
Steven.
sound effect. There's no.
You gotta go.
Hold on.
Steven, would you
Aaron,
let her
should
in
go.
your polycule?
Aaron, you should go.
I'm not answering your question.
Yeah, you should go.
Just leave.
Please leave.
Can
Thank
you
you.
leave? I don't know if your friend wants to come with.
The women they treat like shit on their shows become representative of the type of people they hate, an amalgamation of the women who rejected them, even though those women had nothing to do with it. That doesn't matter, because these people have adopted their own version of identity politics. Any woman will do as a piñata. The rejects vicariously live through the hosts who berate these young women and get a rush from the catharsis of it. You'll see that with even a quick glance at their live chats, filled with bitter, angry, riled up men. People will even invent an opponent in their head based on their experiences and then replace you with that caricature when they argue with you. And then they'll vent and say the most bizarre things that have nothing to do with you. I bet that's happened to you, right? Well, they're not arguing with you. They're arguing with their ex or someone from a comment section 2 days ago or their parents, but not you.
There's a lot of men that are struggling. And when you struggling, you just want things to feel better. You ready for the struggle to be over with. So you start looking for the quickest way to feel better. And if you somebody that is struggling financially, you know what I'm saying? You're not really all that motivated. And on top of that, to make things worse, you ain't really doing too well with the ladies. You know, you ain't really got much going on. You find some guys online that cuss women out, degrade women, and try their best to make women feel like they're less than. It could catch your attention and make you feel a little bit better about yourself. They give you the idea that women want too much. And that's why you're not able to get the woman that you want. And that's why you're not able to get you're not able to get the results that you want when you meet different women and you looking at TV and Instagram and looking at all these made up women that's following around these rappers and, you know, the socialites and stuff like that. You sitting in your room pretty much all day or, you know, going to work and coming home, not really out there in the mix. You ain't even coming across these type of women, but you really sitting back and you kind of infatuated. And because you can't get those women, you don't have no access to them. You'd rather sit there and watch somebody tear them down. You getting a fix off of this. But I want y'all to pay attention to who y'all listening to. These men, these red pill guys that are online telling you what to do with your life, they're leading you down a path of destruction.
In these red pill circles, they're very preoccupied with sex and gender roles. But relationships are best when they're harmonious and motivated by genuine care for the other person and not by what you want to get out of them. If you're self-interested, then you don't really want a relationship. From a traditionalist perspective, a self-interested person actually wants a prostitute or a maid or a secretary. And if that's what you want, then more power to you. But self-interest is best served when you're self-aware. So be aware that what you really want is a prostitute or a maid rather than a spouse. And you'll be happier for it. The inverse also requires self-awareness, but it has a much different dynamic, a much more challenging dynamic. You see, if you really do desire a good, healthy relationship, unlike a prostitute or a maid, you're not going to be able to purchase it. And the more you try to purchase it, the less likely you'll be to get it.
After looks, what would you say are the most important qualities a woman must have?
She must be coachable. And what I mean by that is she's got to be willing to shut up and take orders, right? She's got to be like by your side at all times. And I always say like the best girlfriend is damn near your assistant.
That guy is doomed to a lifetime of shitty relationships because he does not really want a relationship. He wants an employee. And he actually projects his own materialism onto women.
Men love women far differently than women love men. Men love women for real. Women love men.
Women love men for real.
No, they don't. Women love men under the premise that they provide value. Men love women idealistically. Women tend to love men more from an opportunistic standpoint.
Says the guy who wants an assistant for a relationship.
Women's value is 100% determined by the way that they look, okay? That is their primary agency. Everything else comes after, okay?
That's why their transactional view of relationships is sabotaging so many people's efforts to find a good relationship. As diametrically opposed as the right and left seem to be nowadays, interestingly, I've been seeing an increasing amount of agreement between them when it comes to consumerism. What's funny to me is that both seem to have an intense disdain for consumerism, yet absolutely refuse to unite over it. Why? Rather than blame each other, why not build up this bridge rather than burn it? Because our society has been so focused on consumerism, it has spilled over into our relationships and has gotten to the point where we're even being told to see our potential partners as products. Consume product and get excited for next product. That's what they're selling. The red pill people would no doubt deny that, but when you look at their perceptions, their advice, and even the very language they use, it becomes clear. They'll describe people as either high value or low value.
Well, maybe they did something, they increased their value added enough to the point where they can wife up a single mommy.
So if you're a high value man, you should be looking to attract a high value woman. And
is there a high value woman?
Do high value women exist? If so, who are they?
What's your definition of a high value man? And what do you think a high value woman is?
They say things like the sexual marketplace or sexual market value.
For the current sexual marketplace disparity.
For sexual market value, for sexual market value, for sexual market value. Who's going to be more valuable in a sexual market? Global sexual marketplace?
Him by foreign.
He's already. Oh, goddamn, I'm actually with a really high value guy. I got with a really good dude.
Bam.
And now, if that is you, that's why I get so bent out of shape with like
women got to build equity, baby.
Exactly. Well,
build equity.
And then you listen to, we were just mentioning her name, Aisha Curry's like, oh no, it's not good enough. It's not enough for me. It's like, you're like on your decline of your hard on your decline of your sexual market value, and you are with
the sexual marketplace value chart. Here is what we're going to dive into right now. And on this axis here, we've got on a scale of 1 to 10 the SMV, again, sexual marketplace value.
That and the prospect of the return of the dividend sent the stock flying 8.8% in aftermarket trading. Buy.
They're constantly rating people on a scale of 1 to 10, like a media critic.
Ask everyone to rate their looks on a scale of 1 to 10 really quick.
We're going to rate each other off beauty alone, not off personality. From 1 to 10, 10 means you're a supermodel, 1 means you're butt ugly, 5 means you're an average looking person.
I'm going to stick with my answer. It's a 6.7.
Nev,
I'm going to say a 6 for me as well.
John?
Give myself a 7 today because this suit is really good.
I say 7.
I would say a 9. A 10's not real. That's like an abstraction, right? Like assuming a normal distribution. Right. Well, you know, people, I think they misunderstand that. They tend to think that like a 7 is average because they think 7 is 70%. That's like a C. Assuming a normal distribution, this is very important, rating women, rating people in general. 5 would be like a perfect average, and then you would see like a bell curve sort of slope from there. So if you're talking about a 7, I mean, that's already like what, top 15%, probably even greater than that. It's very important stuff.
Hello, darkness. They'll talk about someone's body count, which means how many people they've had sex with.
A man looking at a woman who has a large body count than a woman looking at a man who has a large body count.
Certainly.
What's the body count?
What is the body count? What's the Destiny body count?
What's the body count?
500 plus easily.
Destiny, what is your body count?
The horrifying, terrifying women discussing their body counts.
What do you think the average body count at ASU is?
What a body count would be too high to get married.
To a woman with a low body count.
My name's Elijah Schaefer. We're here on the streets of Australia talking to people about body counts. How high is too high in the dating scene?
Notice that they don't refer to them as people, but bodies. It's dehumanizing. They might as well be referring to the body of a car, because that's exactly how they tell you to purchase your significant other, like a car. They want something brand new. But if they have to get something used, it can't have too many miles on it, and it has to be of high quality for the best possible price. What a cold, impersonal, bitter-prone way to have an intimate relationship with someone. This is basically just turning mindless, shallow consumerism into a relationship. The same people telling you to hate Disney and Target and McDonald's are the ones telling you to have a Mick relationship. People aren't products. You don't own your significant other. You don't even own the children you make together. You don't own people. You may be responsible for them, but you don't own them. Imagine my shock when I found a YouTube short collaboration that mentioned transactional relationships as being something negative. Oh, well, great. Did I have these people wrong all along? Let's see.
Have you ever seen a woman fantasize over the nice guy?
No, that's because it doesn't happen. In movies, women always fall for the Christian Greys of the world.
The well-dressed, well-spoken alpha men. Those are the guys who get the girls.
Elvis? That man didn't follow a single rule, and women loved him for it.
This is why you don't see women getting off at the thought of John Legend. Yikes.
Now, before you come at us for making fun of nice guys, listen up. Nice guys create transactional relationships. They don't do what they do out of love.
They do it out of expectation. That's inauthentic at best and manipulative at worst.
When you act like a nice guy who's always trying to appease a woman, you deprive her of her innate desire to relax in your presence.
Instead of letting you run the show, she becomes the one in charge of it.
And a woman isn't turned off by nice guys because she's toxic.
She's turned off by him because she sees right through the act. Women wanting masculinity isn't toxic. It's biology.
So you can't possibly be a nice guy without it being an act, you see. So what are they telling you to do? What's the alternative? Be an asshole? That will be the takeaway for a lot of guys who watch this stuff. And they're going to fail because of it. But what's her idea of a good relationship that is not transactional? This is actually my second attempt at uploading this video because this clip I'm about to show you got me copyright claims due to the ridiculous sexy music they put on it, so unfortunately I have to narrate. He asks, why do you feel like submission helps you feel more feminine? You don't have to be the alpha female? And she says, yeah, I don't have to. I know that if my finances crashed tomorrow, the house is under control, everything is stable, he provides us stability, and I can fall into my feminine side. I can do more things I enjoy rather than stress myself out. She doesn't want a man, she wants an insurance policy. And that's not transactional? What happens when her insurance policy boyfriend gets cancer or gets into a bad car accident and suddenly he's the one who has to rely on her and needs her for help and stability? What then? You know, and I didn't put the music on that clip. They did. They're the ones who clip out these segments like that because they think it's the cream of the crop, essentially doing my work for me. This isn't me snipping out of context clips. These are the shorts they themselves created because they think it sounds good. You know, their pearls of wisdom are my headshots. What they think makes them sound good is actually what makes them sound despicable. But they're so broken that they can't see it. And it would be one thing if these people were just quietly broken, but no. They're spreading their baggage to everybody else, transmitting their problems like an STD. Otherwise, I'd just leave them alone. Don't want to be the alpha? She spends all day, every day, telling men how to behave, but she doesn't want to be the alpha. There's a certain mindset that makes a relationship not only last, but also happy. You know what it is? It's this. You should want to do things for your significant other without expecting anything in return other than the gratification of doing it for them, the gratification of making them happy. That's it. It should not feel like a chore. Self-interest is not a consideration, but the trick is that both people in the relationship should be of that mindset, because if they're not, then one will be vulnerable to be taken advantage of by the other, and that is how abuse can occur. But when both people in the relationship have that selfless mindset to make each other happy, outwardly, It can sort of look transactional, but it isn't. That might be one of the things that tricks people into thinking of it that way. But they're just observing things at a surface level. And when they base their advice on that surface level, consumerism like understanding of relationships, it's clear that they have no idea what they're talking about. We broke all the rules. My wife and I met in 1996. I was 19, she was 18. Neither of us were virgins when we met, and we had sex right away. Some people think it's a terrible sign to have sex on the first date. Well, we had sex before our first date. And to a lot of people, that sounds really bad, and I get it. What I just told you goes against traditional values, religious values, and probably anything your parents would tell you to do. Even I am certainly not telling you to do it that way. So why am I telling you this at all? Because these red pill people who should all be absolutely infested with imposter syndrome would have told me to never stay with the woman who became my wife. They would have me believing that she's tainted, damaged, and would never be loyal, monogamous, or a good mother, and all of that would have been completely wrong. And I would have thrown away the love of my life and the mother of my children if these red pill people were around back then and I listened when I was 19 and impressionable. Sometimes I wonder how many marriages, how many happy marriages never were because of them. Someone is not damaged goods just because they had sex before you came along or because they know they want you right away. It seems to me that someone who is preoccupied with finding somebody who has had no sex or very little sex is struggling with their own insecurities. Perhaps they feel like they'd be competing with the performances of the men who came before them.
I know that for myself, the last thing I would want in marriage is if like I married a girl, but some guy that she had had sex with, she was still hung up on him, like emotionally and mentally. That would tear me up inside.
In their obsession with being masculine, the very first thing they should have done was deal with their own insecurities. Experienced, competent, masculine men are not insecure piss babies who lack confidence in their ability, or need to know the exact location of their wives every second of the day because they think another man will be more enticing than they are.
She's got to be like by your side at all times. And
my wife and I lived together for 7 years before we got married. That is also against traditional advice. But how much do you really know somebody you never lived with? I needed time to truly get to know the woman who would become my wife, so we lived together as husband and wife long before we formally became husband and wife. This meant that I was very well informed when we got married. When I met my wife, I had a grand total of $700 to my name. I did not have any nice clothes except for my Class A's, which she never even saw me in, but I did have a crappy Honda Civic with an ignition that I jury-rigged with a broken pencil just to keep it running. I could not impress her with my wealth because I didn't have any wealth. But if I did have wealth, it certainly would not have been wise to flaunt it, so the problem of knowing if she wanted me for me and not my wealth was a total non-issue. I had nothing, and she knew it. And there was no indication that I was ever going to have anything. And these red pill people would have called me a pretty low-value guy. And what would they think of her for immediately sleeping with a low-value guy? Well, she gave me many years of happiness that can't be taken away, and children I would die for. And this guy who had nothing ended up happily paying for our house and buying her a car of her own, no strings attached. And like I said, maybe that looks transactional to an outsider, sure. But we never thought of it that way. She never asked for those things, and neither did I. We would have been together regardless. It just happened that way because it's what we wanted to do with each other. But imagine if social media existed in the 90s and poisoned our brains to think so selfishly, to think of relationships as transactional and people as products. Perhaps we would have expected or even demanded those things of each other and then resent each other for it, rather than be grateful to each other for wanting to do it of our own volition. My wife and I didn't work on our relationship because we don't need to. Relationships should not be work. You should be in them because it's what you want and because you enjoy it. It should not feel like work. And if it does, then I think that just fosters resentment. If you feel like you're stuck in a place you don't want to be, that's not healthy. Communication is very important. Be honest with each other and let each other know how you feel. One of the things that led me to do a deep dive into this little carcinogenic culture of red pill advice was because of Steven Crowder, a very popular right-wing social media influencer who can't get through 2 sentences without telling 15 lies. He's one of these guys who sold conservative values to people and boasted about his marriage, about how he did it the right way, claiming that both he and his wife were virgins when they got married. Currently, they're going through a bitter divorce. His wife released some security cam footage from their house that caught an argument they had, and it really spoke volumes about how people like Crowder treat relationships like a consumer. Now, there are those who claim that the video could be taken out of context, or that maybe his wife provoked him on purpose, knowing that the security camera would record the result. Normally, I'd say that those are fair concerns, but short of practicing an acting role for a video, there is no context in which I would ever speak to my wife the way Crowder spoke to his wife. My wife would not, for instance, be able to hide a camera and provoke me to make me look bad. I can't even remember the last time we even raised our voices at each other. So, what did he do that was so bad, and why am I talking about it? Well, first of all, a lot of these red pill people fell in line to defend him, to defend the indefensible. And it just really punctuated how corrupt this ideology is. That really concerned me because it's affecting a lot of young minds, essentially handicapping those who are seeking help. It's like going to a doctor for a broken leg and the doctor just breaks your arm too, and then you thank him for it and will no doubt get mad at me for telling you that he wronged you. First of all, Crowder's wife was 8 months pregnant with twins, and it was apparently a high-risk pregnancy. Crowder was sitting outside with his feet up, puffing on a cigar. He's a multimillionaire, yet they only have one car, which is weird. Some speculate that that's intentional as a tool of control so that she has to rely on him and doesn't have the freedom to take her own car to do what she wants. Now, I don't know if that was the case, but it would not surprise me if it was. It really does fall in line with this idea of wanting women to rely on the man. She wanted to go grocery shopping. He demanded that she not go because he wanted to have the car available in case he wanted to go to his friend's house or to his parents or to the gym.
I drew a boundary. I drew a boundary. No, you just did it. I drew a boundary of abusive and cruel. You were not taking the car. Because if you refuse to do wifely things, then I will go pick up the groceries.
There is no groceries. I'd be happy.
Steaks, wood pellets, my grill. I know it's an unreasonable request, but I'll go do it. How about you first? Hillary, how do you respect the man? Yes. How do you man? How do you man and receive love like that. No. How do they manage it? No, you're not taking the car.
Stephen,
You're not taking the car.
Stephen,
You are not
then I
taking
will ask them to pick me up. Would you like me to ask?
Oh, that's right.
It's not about Stephen.
Get an Uber.
Okay, Stephen, I can't.
Feeling some constraints?
Stephen.
Like, I can't
Stephen.
go. Listen to me. You want to walk out right now? Listen to me. I can't go to the gym. I can't go to my parents. I can't call my friends. I can't be home. You're going to take the car and leave me here. Hillary, just think of how boxed in you've made me.
What do you need me to pick up? I'll get it. I'll be back when I'm back.
No, that doesn't work either. You'll be back when you're back. That doesn't work either.
See,
Do you understand the difference between my life being set to the second and you're going, I'll be back when I'm back?
Stephen.
And they can't do it. Can you do that?
Some people claimed that he had to relax because he was going to have surgery on his chest the next day or the day after that or whatever. But if so, then why was he talking about going to the gym? So I don't buy that. His wife, on the other hand, had an undeniable medical issue. She was at the end of a high-risk pregnancy, and you know what Crowder wanted her to do rather than get groceries? He wanted her to walk his dogs and give them medication that pregnant women weren't supposed to handle. You see how much this pro-life guy actually cares about the unborn. He cares as long as it doesn't inconvenience him. So you can pretty much guess how he would behave if he could get pregnant and wanted an abortion. Anyway, I digress. And what would he do? Well, she did that. Sit and smoke. Some argued that he works hard and it was probably his only time to relax. Let's get something clear. Crowder talks for a living. He isn't a mechanic. He's not a farmer or a lumberjack. He talks. His hands are probably baby smooth. Now, because she was concerned about handling the dog's medication, Crowder's solution was to tell her to wear gloves. During this interaction, she repeatedly told him that she loves him, and he denied that she loves him and explicitly told her that he does not love her.
The only way out of this is discipline and respect. It's the only way out of it, or we're at an impasse.
We are at an impasse.
Good. Because you can't have any discipline or respect. There you go. You throw your hand, you give up so easily.
I don't give up, Stephen.
Hillary, you give up so easily. I just said the only way out of this is discipline and respect. You said, then we're at an impasse.
Stephen, no, we are at an impasse, okay? I love you, but Stephen, your abuse is sick. Your abuse
Watch it.
is sick.
Watch it. And watch it.
I'm gonna let go. I'll get what you need me to get. And I need some space. We need to just stop engaging for a little bit, okay? I love you. I love you very much.
I don't love you. That's the big problem.
He goes into debate bro mode with his own wife and tells her basically that her refusal to walk the dogs and put on the gloves to give the dogs their medication makes it clear that she does not love him.
I've never received love from you, and the fact is when I go, look, I need you to do A, B, C, and D, you just be disciplined about it, you go, no, but I love you more than life itself. Okay, put on some gloves. No, but I love you more than life itself. That's not fair. That's not fair, and it's disingenuous. Hillary, you're right, we're at an impasse. Become someone, listen to me, day in and day out, worthy of a wife. No, not as a wife. I didn't say as a wife. Hillary, come on now.
I'm not gonna engage. I'm not gonna engage anymore. I'm gonna go. I'll text me what you need. I'll get you what you need. I love you. I'm committed to you.
Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to do those things?
I'm not trying to.
Are you committed enough to do those things? You're not committed to anything. You're not committed to anything. You just said I love you. I'm committed to you. Walk the dogs. Put on some gloves. Walk the dogs. Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to do those things? Are you committed enough to do those things? Are you committed enough to do those things?
I'm gonna
walk the dogs. Put on some gloves. Are you committed enough to get the medication the dogs take? No, you take Betty.
You see what I mean by transactional? He makes demands and expects her to obey like a service or an employee. His wife is a product. He is a consumer. If she does not serve him on demand, then her love for him is called into question. That is what love is to someone like Crowder. It's consumerism. Guys like this are teaching our youth, and YouTube gives them a massive platform to do it with millions of subscribers. Why? Because they bring in traffic, and traffic brings in money. It's consumerism all the way down. My wife and I had several high-risk pregnancies. I just did everything, no questions asked. She didn't have to tell me. That would have been laughable. I wanted to do it. I didn't want her to take any risks. If she needed to go somewhere, then I went too. Because get this, what if she went into, labor? Making her walk dogs alone would have been unthinkable. We got groceries together. I put them all away. I took over all the chores. I took over cleaning the cat's litter box because pregnant women are supposed to avoid doing that due to possibly getting toxoplasmosis, which can cause blindness and mental disabilities in the baby. And nobody had to ask me to do it. It was just a given. And then she had to have a C-section. So I had to continue to do everything even after our son was born. I changed his diapers. I did the 3 a.m. feedings. I carried my wife to the bathroom when she needed to go, and then carried her back when she was done. And I feel like some dudes would think that I'm bragging right now because they don't realize I was just doing what I'm supposed to do. It would be like bragging about brushing your teeth. But they don't know that because they were brought up to see relationships in a transactional way. The difference between the way Crowder treats his wife and the way I treat mine is the same difference between toxic masculinity and positive masculinity. Now, a lot of these red pill people like to present the straw man that toxic masculinity is an indictment against all masculinity, and in that way they slip in the toxic shit as if that is what masculinity is supposed to be. It's not. Please bear in mind that what I'm about to tell you has a major caveat. These traits that I'm about to describe should ideally be able to apply to any gender. But in the context of this subject matter, particularly traditional conservatism, I'm going to refer to these traits as masculine because I just think it'll be easier to explain the difference between where people are and where they should be. Positive masculinity entails being responsible, accountable, knowing what your duties are, and fulfilling your duties without being asked and without complaining. Positive masculinity is using your strength to protect and help the vulnerable. Toxic masculinity is using your power to exploit and hurt the vulnerable. Take note of the difference between strength and power. Strength is about your ability to control yourself. Power is about your ability to control others. While power does not cause corruption, it can facilitate the corruption that already exists within. Strong men are less corruptible, so they use their power to help others. Weak men are more corruptible, so they use their power to exploit others. Positive masculinity creates, encourages, shares, and instructs. Toxic masculinity demeans demands, takes, bullies. One is constructive and the other is destructive. And in the few exceptions when positive masculinity needs to be destructive, like in a case of self-defense, for instance, there is no joy in it. It's just a grim necessity with mercy and forgiveness whenever possible. But toxic masculinity derives pleasure from hurting others and being cruel. Positive masculinity is more concerned with duty, while toxic masculinity is more concerned with honor. That is not to say that honor is bad. Being honorable naturally follows from fulfilling your duties, but focus on honor is what causes people to sacrifice their duties to glorify their image. Positive masculinity does not describe Crowder. Crowder is not masculine at all. He's a child. He does not want a wife. He wants a mommy to take care of him. He's not a man. He's a boy.
No, that doesn't work either.
If a wealthy man-child like Crowder has only one car because it's easier to control his wife that way, what does that say about his actual confidence? I'm not talking about the bravado that is often mistaken for confidence, the fake show he puts on for his audience. I'm talking about actions speaking louder than words, louder than Crowder. When I say I bought my wife a car, I don't mean that I walked into the dealership and paid cash the way Crowder could have easily done for his wife. I mean that I got a loan and paid the car off over a period of 5 years without complaint. And I didn't do that because she asked me. She didn't. And I didn't do that because I was trying to buy her love. She already loved me. I did that because I knew it would make her life easier. And I care about her and I want her to have an easier life. Was I worried about where she was going or what she was doing? No, of course not. There's no strings attached. She can use the car for whatever she wants. I don't own my wife. We trust each other. We love each other. There's no reason to be suspicious or jealous. Crowder, like those other losers I showed you, has made it clear that he's against no-fault divorce. In other words, he doesn't think a woman should be able to divorce her husband just because she wants to. Imagine what kind of person would want to force someone to stay in a relationship that they don't want to be in. Even if you claim it's for their children, what do you think having miserable fighting parents does to their children? No, it's sick to want to force someone to be in that situation. Why would you even want someone who does not want you back? That doesn't make any sense to me. It's what an abuser would want. And Crowder's wife accused him of abusing her. His response was to say, "Watch it," to her in a threatening tone. You know, exactly like an abuser would.
I love you, but Steven, your abuse is sick. Your abuse
Watch it.
is sick.
Watch it. Watch it.
This leads me to the favorite statistic that these red pill people love to trot out. They love to say that it's women who initiate 80% of divorces.
What's the percent of divorces that are initiated by women, Brian?
78.
80%.
78.
80%.
80%.
Did you know that women leave men 80% of the time?
Want to leave because 80% of divorces are initiated by women.
Shows that 70 to 90% of divorces are initiated by the women.
That women initiate 70% of divorce.
85% of divorces now are initiated by women, and 50% of people approximately get divorced.
The fact is, 80% of women are the ones ending marriages, 90% if they have a degree.
Now, I've known about this statistic way before Jordan Peterson started popping off, and unfortunately, it was due to my own research because I saw how many of my female friends were leaving their husbands. I'm very tired of this victim mentality that has manifested within the female realm. It is hard for me to have empathy for single divorced moms when 90% of the time they are at fault for it. It is completely self-inflicted.
People love misusing statistics to push their narratives. For this one, they use it for more of their demographic salesmanship, to pit men against women, to divide and conquer. They use this statistic to blame women, because how could 80% of women possibly have a good reason to divorce their husbands? Obviously, this must be a problem with women, right? Notice how this conclusion is just based on nothing more than feelings. But it doesn't sound that way because it's using a statistic, thereby creating the illusion that their feelings are part of the data. How could men possibly be at fault for 80% of divorces? Well, maybe they're not. But men are, for instance, at fault for around 90% of murders. So I'm sorry, but I'm going to need a little more evidence than your feelings based on a number being high. Sometimes the numbers are legitimately high. The number being high doesn't prove what you want it to prove. You need more than that.
What I would say is the family is at the bedrock of civilization as a whole. If you have a nation full of healthy families, then you're going to have a healthy nation, right? But there's an attack on the nuclear family. Feminism is a prime example, right? Feminism is something that divides men and women. It causes a lot of tension in households. And as a result of that's one thing that contributes to broken families. If you have a nation that's full of broken families, you have a nation that's slowly going to fall apart. And we see that happening right now.
Imagine spending all day building these careers, pitting men against women, against each other in a war of the sexes, and then complaining about feminism dividing us. Like I said, they take their complaints and then embrace them as their very own characteristics. I can't really tell you how to start an intimate relationship because it's something I haven't had to do at all literally this century, and times have changed quite a bit since I met my wife. But what I can do is tell you what's going to matter in the long run. And that will be a very important consideration when starting a relationship. A big problem with the way people initiate relationships is that they concentrate a lot on the superficial and very little on what will end up mattering most. And of course, the red pill movement reinforces that, thereby inflicting their members with yet another handicap. People go into these meat market apps and swipe through people based on looks alone. People know this, so they do everything they can to present their most dressed up, inauthentic self, and even adorn themselves with status symbols to attract people. What a surefire way to find people who don't want you for you, but a facade, a mask, along with whatever you might have. The picture of the food on the menu as opposed to the real thing. And for what? Sexual appeal? If you ended up having sex with your spouse every single day for an hour a day, which you're not going to do because you're going to get tired of it if you don't eventually space it out, but for argument's sake, let's say that you did. At the end of a year of having sex every day for an hour a day, still 96% of your relationship would be spent not having sex. And when you're older, it's going to be way less important. Yet so many people treat sex and attraction as the most important consideration when initiating a relationship. Funny, isn't it? I think that by having sex right away, my wife and I got that tension, pressure, and mystery out of the way so it no longer clouded our every interaction and we could just concentrate on each other as people and truly get to know each other without all the motivated reasoning that sex brings with it. Again, I'm not suggesting that way is right for everyone. I'm just saying that it worked for us. Even if it's not right for you, however, the premise behind the reasoning is sound, and that is to get to know the person for who they are, and not just as a sexual partner. Your spouse should be your best friend. You should actually want to spend time together. I'm genuinely surprised at how many people don't want to spend their spare time with their spouses. Why even get married if that's the case? Even after 27 years, I want to spend time with my wife. So find someone you can actually be friends with first. Become friends first, even. It's so bizarre to me that people would just walk up to a stranger and ask them out without knowing anything about them or other than what they look like. Admittedly, that's not far off from what happened with me. I met my wife as a friend of a friend of a friend, but I got lucky. If I were single again, I would want to get to know the woman first before considering whether I would ask her out. I probably would not do the equivalent of a cold call and just walk up to a stranger and ask them out. And a lot of times, people don't even like that. If you see someone working out or reading or listening to music or eating or walking somewhere, they probably don't want to be bothered. I know that I don't like to be suddenly put on the spot when I'm not expecting it and I'm concentrating on doing other things. So maybe take some of these things into consideration. Also, ask yourself why you'd be approaching a stranger if it's not based on looks alone. There is no love at first sight. There's infatuation at first sight. And there is a chance it could work out, sure. So try if you must. But the odds are very much against that.
Marriage is not a friendship. I didn't say marriage was a friendship, but
your spouse should be your best friend. When seeking a long-term relationship, looks are not going to tell you what you need to know. You may be able to infer some things, but not enough. You probably want someone who is easy to be around, right? You don't want to be walking on eggshells and constantly butting heads. You see, someone like Crowder is doomed to always have failed relationships because he's an asshole. And in all his failed relationships, the common denominator will be him. He's not the nice guy. And I'd be willing to bet he'll never reflect on that, which is why he's doomed, because he'll never know how to correct it. No, for people like him, everyone else will be to blame. Always. And he'll want to change society before he'll want to change himself. I'm sure he'll be able to fake it in the beginning and probably has, but that can't last. You can't hide what you are forever. And if you find yourself being approached by an asshole who just so happens to not be an asshole toward you in particular, beware, because he's going to be. It's just that he wants something from you at the moment. If you see someone mistreating other people, don't get with them, because eventually they're going to mistreat you too. That is what I would have said to Crowder's wife when she got with him. For the rest of you, above all, don't give in to the demographic salesmanship. When you hear someone trying to sell you the idea that men are better than women or that women are better than men, the proper response is to get angry at them and push back against it because they're creating strife in our lives and our very society. They're claiming to be the cure for division and disharmony while creating division and disharmony. Don't let them. Because more cancer is not the cure for cancer. Get angry and show them that you're angry. That they will understand, because these people care very much about their image. It's what's most important to them. And if people are not happy with their image, then they will be incentivized to change it. And that is what we need from them, to change. And that's all I have to say for now. Thank you, everyone. Take care.